"You're a stupid old man." My wife's words hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. They echo through the kitchen, bouncing off the walls, rattling every corner of the house, and somehow shaking something inside me too. Her anger is raw, sharp, and sudden, but I can feel the weight of it as if it's been accumulating for years. She grabs my old wallet from the counter, leather worn, corners frayed, edges softened by decades of handling. It isn't just a wallet. It's a piece of my life. But she doesn't care. She only sees an object to destroy, a target for her rage, and in that moment, nothing else exists to her. Before I can react, she storms over to the fireplace, yanks open the metal gate with a loud clang, and hurls the wallet into the roaring flames. The fire devours it instantly, black smoke curling upward as if mocking me. The smell of scorched leather hits my nose, sharp and bitter. Then I sit down heavily, chest tightening, but I don't move to stop her. 70 years of life have taught me that storms like this often burn themselves out faster when you let them rage. She thinks she's teaching me a lesson, showing who holds the power. But she has no idea what she's about to lose, or what she almost destroys in her blind fury. Inside that wallet was a small, silver key, stitched deep into the lining so carefully that no one would notice unless they looked for it. A key to a safe she had never seen. A safe that contained more than money, papers, accounts, investments, things that could shape and secure a future for both of us. She doesn't see it. She doesn't know it exists. And in her rage, she tosses the wallet into the fire like it's nothing. The irony burns hotter than the flames themselves. I can feel the tension in the room, the quiet patience I've carried for decades fighting against the chaos she's unleashed. And I let it happen. She paces, still shouting, still trying to convince herself she's won something, still certain that this moment of destruction is proof of her strength. I watch her, quietly, breathing evenly, chest rising and falling with steady rhythm. I've lived long enough to know that punishment and anger can only teach if tempered with understanding. But this time, understanding will come from reality itself. The key, the safe, the contents she knows nothing about, they will speak louder than any lecture, any argument, any attempt to reason. 30 minutes pass. 30 minutes for fate to catch up. The phone rings, sharp and insistent. She jumps at it, startled, fumbling to answer. Her voice is cautious, tense, as the bank begins to speak. I watch her face go pale, the color draining rapidly as realization dawns. The nightmare she set in motion, her anger, her impulsive destruction, is now touching her life directly. The wallet, the key, the safe, all of it matters far more than she ever imagined. And suddenly, the consequences are undeniable. Her hands shake. Her steps falter. She listens, trying to grasp the numbers, codes, accounts, and papers being described to her. But comprehension lags behind panic. Her anger from just half an hour ago transforms into disbelief, then fear, and finally, raw regret. And through it all, I sit quietly, 70 years old, white-skinned, clean-shaved with decent hair, watching her unravel. I feel neither triumph nor satisfaction, only a heavy, quiet understanding that some lessons cannot be forced, they must be experienced. I can see it in her eyes, the shift from fury to horror. She was blind to what mattered, blind to the careful planning and sacrifices hidden in that old wallet. Now in the aftermath, she realizes just how close she came to destroying everything I had secured for us. And in that moment, I understand something too. Patience, foresight, and quiet endurance have power beyond shouting, beyond anger, beyond destruction. The wallet may be burned, but the lesson has only just begun. The room smells of smoke, leather, and faint ash. The fire dwindles, embers glowing softly. Silence stretches over us like a heavy curtain, and she freezes, finally confronted with the cost of her impulsiveness. The bank's voice on the other end, sharp and relentless, confirms it. The nightmare is real. What she almost destroyed could have been the foundation of her own future. And I sit there, calm, steady, watching, knowing that the next 30 minutes will leave a mark neither of us will ever forget. The room is heavy with smoke and the faint scent of burned leather, but the tension is heavier. My wife sits on the edge of the couch, phone still pressed to her ear, trembling, voice rising and falling as she tries to make sense of the nightmare the bank is unfolding before her. I watch silently, 70 years old, white-skinned, clean-shaved, decent hair, arms resting on my knees, knowing that any word I speak right now would only get lost in the storm. This is a lesson that must be felt, not explained. That her anger from minutes ago has vanished, replaced by disbelief and panic. Her eyes dart around the room, lingering on the smoldering fireplace, the ashes of my old wallet, and the fragments of leather that survived the flames. She suddenly sees the care I put into that wallet, the decades of patience, the foresight to hide a key to a safe that contains more than she ever imagined. And it hits her like a punch. This wasn't just a wallet, and I wasn't just an old man to yell at. She had destroyed something irreplaceable. The phone continues to ring in her mind, even if it's gone silent now. The bank has called, verifying accounts, confirming documents, and suddenly every careless action she took feels like it's clawing back at her. She mutters half-formed questions into the phone, stumbling over numbers and codes, trying to make sense of her own disaster. Her hands shake violently, gripping the handset as if holding tighter could somehow reverse the flames that already consumed my wallet. I don't intervene. I sit back, letting her experience it fully. Because panic has a clarity that explanations never can. I see comprehension slowly dawn in her eyes, the realization that in her blind rage, she almost destroyed a future she doesn't fully understand. The trembling increases, and she begins pacing again, slower this time, each step heavier than the last. She mutters apologies, half to herself, half to me, but her voice cracks, barely audible. This isn't about forgiveness yet, it's about the recognition of consequences. She's beginning to see that anger, no matter how justified it feels in the moment, can cost more than we ever imagine. I stand walking toward the window and pull the curtain aside. Morning sunlight streams in, illuminating the floating dust particles, the faint smoke lingering from the fire. It catches the remnants of the wallet and the embers in the fireplace, turning destruction into a quiet, stark clarity. She stops pacing and looks at me, tears welling, and I know she finally sees what I've been trying to teach all along. Foresight, patience, and quiet planning are invisible but powerful. Actions, even small ones, ripple far beyond what we see. She collapses onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. Her body trembles as sobs threaten to break free. I sit beside her, hand resting lightly on her shoulder, not to console, not to forgive, but to anchor her, to give her a reminder that the guidance she ignored isn't gone. She begins to whisper fragments of apology, voice trembling. I didn't think. I didn't realize. Her words are almost inaudible, but the weight behind them is enormous. I nod quietly. Sometimes silence teaches more than words ever could. The minutes stretch. I watch her slowly regain composure, though the tremor in her hands remains. She glances again at the fireplace, at the ashes, at the fragments of the wallet. I can see the lesson settling in. Anger is temporary, but consequences endure. She now knows, viscerally, that what we often destroy in moments of rage can never truly be replaced. She may try to apologize. She may try to fix what's been broken, but the realization itself is the first, true step toward understanding. And then the phone rings again. She jumps at it, hesitates, and picks it up. The voice on the other end is calm, factual, but the effect is catastrophic. It confirms what she already fears. The bank, the safe, the funds all in order, yes, but close to being lost. She flinches at the details, mouth opening and closing, trying to grasp the scale of her mistake. I remain quiet, watching her face, the shifting expression from panic to comprehension. Knowing that lessons this deep are permanent. Finally, she sinks back into the couch, exhausted, trembling, her voice cracking with guilt and fear. She looks at me, eyes wide and searching, needing confirmation that the disaster isn't irreversible. I place a steady hand on her shoulder, silent, letting the warmth of my presence speak louder than any lecture. She nods slowly, finally understanding that the weight of consequences is heavier than anger. And foresight is more valuable than pride. The room is quiet now, except for the faint ticking of the wall clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator. The smoke begins to fade, but the lesson lingers, thick and undeniable. I sit back, watching, knowing that the next part of this storm, the reckoning, the reflection, the redemption is just beginning. And I know that by the time she absorbs the full weight of what just happened, nothing will ever be the same again. The phone is silent now, but the tension in the room hasn't gone anywhere. My wife sits slumped on the couch, trembling, staring at the faintly glowing embers in the fireplace, the ashes of the wallet, the fragments of leather scattered across the floor. I remain standing, 70 years old, white-skinned, clean-shaved, decent hair, arms folded loosely, just watching. She doesn't need words right now. She needs to feel the weight of what her actions almost cost her, and what her fury almost destroyed. She lifts her head. Eyes red, face pale, and for the first time, she sees me, not as the old man she yelled at, not as someone to vent her anger on, but as the quiet anchor she's ignored for decades. I sit slowly in the chair across from her, letting the silence stretch. The lesson is already working. I can see it in the way her hands shake less violently, the way her chest rises and falls with uneven breaths, the way she finally notices the significance of the embers in the fireplace, the scattered ashes, the remnants of a carefully hidden secret. Then she realizes it fully. The key, the safe, everything I carefully protected, everything she burned without thought, still exists. The panic in her eyes spikes again as she imagines what could have happened if I hadn't taken precautions, if she hadn't missed the key, if her anger had destroyed not just a wallet, but a future. She whispers, barely audible, I almost lost it all. Her voice cracks as the reality settles in, and I let her sit with that truth. Some lessons aren't learned through words, they're experienced, deeply, painfully. She begins pacing the room, slower now, her steps weighted with comprehension and fear. The chaos of her rage has subsided, replaced by reflection. She mutters half-formed apologies, half to herself, half to me. Her voice shakes. I didn't think. I didn't realize. I was so blind. The words tumble out, each syllable a mark of awakening. I remain silent, because there is no comfort in my words. This is hers to feel, hers to carry. And I can see the shift beginning, the anger leaving, the fear settling into understanding, the recklessness giving way to reflection. I rise and walk toward the window, pulling back the curtain. Morning sunlight floods the room, illuminating the dust and smoke still lingering from the fireplace. The light lands on the broken wallet, the small embers, the faint smell of charred leather. She follows my gaze, and I can see comprehension done fully in her eyes. She understands now what foresight, planning, and patience can do. She sees the weight of her impulsive actions, the ripples they create, and the lesson is heavier than any punishment I could ever give. Minutes pass. She sinks back into the couch, head bowed, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know. She says again, almost repeating herself, almost begging for guidance, for reassurance. I lean slightly forward, hand resting gently on her shoulder, steady and firm. Not as a lecture, not as punishment, but as a reminder, even after destruction, calm and patience remain. Even when fury threatens to undo everything, wisdom endures. She nods slowly, the trembling in her hands less now, replaced by the first real hint of understanding. The phone rings again. She jumps at it, fumbling. Her hands are steadier than before, but panic still lingers in her eyes. She answers, listening carefully. The voice on the other end is calm, professional, but the effect is undeniable. The details confirm that the safe is intact, that the money and documents remain secure, and that her anger, though destructive, did not destroy the foundation I quietly built over decades. She exhales slowly, relief mingling with shame. She finally looks at me, and I see the mixture of respect, fear, and understanding. Her gaze lingers on me, taking in the 70 years of quiet endurance, the wisdom etched in lines on my face, the calm patience that has guided her life more than she ever noticed. She realizes that this old man she mocked, screamed at, and tried to punish has been quietly protecting her, and by extension, their future. I nod slowly, acknowledging the shift in her understanding without a single word. The room is quiet, except for the ticking of the wall clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the dying embers in the fireplace. She sits, trembling slightly, absorbing the lesson, the reality, and the consequences. The wallet may be gone, but the key, the safe, and the wisdom behind every quiet act remain. And in that silence, in the golden morning light, I know that this is the turning point. The anger has passed, but the understanding, the reflection, and the moral clarity are just beginning to take hold. And I also know, silently, that by the time she has fully absorbed this, she will never underestimate patience, foresight, or quiet endurance again. The storm has not destroyed her, but it has changed her, forever. The room is quiet now, yet the weight of what just happened hangs in the air like smoke that refuses to dissipate. My wife sits on the couch, shoulders slumped, trembling, staring at the faintly glowing embers of the fireplace and the blackened remains of my old wallet. I stand nearby, 70 years old, white-skinned, clean-shaved, decent hair, arms folded loosely, taking in the scene. I don't rush her. I don't need to speak. Some lessons cannot be explained. They must be absorbed, felt, carried in the chest. She is beginning to feel it now. Her hands shake slightly as she reaches toward the ashes, almost touching the fragments, then pulls back. She glances at me, eyes wide, voice catching as she whispers, I almost lost everything." Relief and fear mingle on her pale face. The anger she carried earlier has completely vanished, replaced by a new emotion, comprehension. She finally sees what I have protected quietly all these years. She sees that this old man, whom she mocked and yelled at, has been safeguarding a future she barely considered, and that her reckless anger could have destroyed it all. I sit beside her on the couch, placing a steady hand on her arm. Not as punishment, not as a lecture, but as a reminder that guidance has not abandoned her. She exhales slowly, trembling less, and begins to pace the room again, slower this time. Every step weighted with reflection and fear. I didn't think," she mutters, voice cracking. "I didn't know how much I could destroy." Her words are raw, unpolished, yet they carry a weight that no apology could ever match. I let her speak, let her stumble through the confession of her near catastrophe. Sunlight streams through the windows, illuminating the room and turning the floating dust particles into golden flecks. The smoke from the fireplace curls lazily, mixing with the light, casting shadows across the floor littered with ashes and fragments of leather. She looks at the remnants of my wallet again, and I see the realization hit fully. She had destroyed more than just leather and paper. She had almost destroyed trust, planning, and security, the foundation of what we have built together. Her trembling hands curl into fists, then slowly relax, the weight of understanding settling into her chest. The phone rings again, faint and distant, but it does not matter. The bank has confirmed the safe is intact, the funds are secure, and the nightmare she nearly caused is contained. She picks up the receiver anyway, voice hesitant, listening to the calm, factual voice on the other end. Panic rises briefly, then fades into comprehension. Relief floods her features, yet it is tempered by shame and awe at the realization that a single careless act could have erased decades of planning, trust, and security. She collapses back onto the couch, head and hands shaking lightly, and I remain seated beside her. My hand rests gently on hers, steady, calm, unshakable. She glances up, finally meeting my eyes. In that look, there is recognition, a new respect born not of fear, but of understanding. She sees me for what I truly am, not just a 70-year-old man, but a quiet guardian of our future. Someone who bore patience and foresight as armor while others failed to see it. We sit together in silence, the morning sunlight spilling across the room, casting a warm, forgiving glow over the ashes, the embers, and our shared realization. The lesson has fully landed now. Anger may destroy in a moment, but foresight, patience, and careful planning endure. She reaches for my hand, trembling, and I let her, steady and patient, allowing her to absorb the lesson in full. She does not need words. The understanding is mutual, unspoken, yet complete. Minutes pass. Dust floats in golden light. The embers die slowly in the fireplace, leaving faint traces of warmth. She leans slightly against me, finally calm, fully aware of the consequences of her actions, fully aware of the lesson she will carry forever. And in that quiet, golden morning light, I realize the truth I have always known. Sometimes the most powerful teaching is silence, patience, and enduring foresight. The chaos is over. The lesson is permanent. The storm has passed and wisdom remains. For the first time all morning, she breathes freely, shoulders relaxed, tears drying on her cheeks. The remnants of destruction are visible, but so is the new understanding, reflection, and respect between us. And I, 70 years old, white-skinned, clean-shaved, steady and calm, know that this is the moment the lesson settles, forever etched in memory, forever carried in the heart, teaching the power of patience, foresight, and enduring care.